Hello community, welcome to A Cup Full with myself, Tshegetso Mwebi. Hello beautiful people, thank you so much for joining me in a new week for a new episode of A Cup Full. You are officially part of this community and I hope you make yourself at home because that is exactly where you are. A Cup Full's main purpose is to help young people such as you and me navigate the in-betweens of life and take care of our well-being, or as I like to say, tend to our cups and keep them full, all the while working on healing, growing, learning, and ultimately thriving. Life is constantly happening in many, many ways, and if this space can give you even a little bit of affirmation, knowledge, wisdom, the strength to keep going, whatever need you might have in your current season and that which you can apply in your future seasons, I feel like the purpose of this podcast would truly and 100% be fulfilled. I have a question. How many times have you said yes to things you had no capacity to take on or be present for? And how many times have you been able to say no in the very same situation or situations? So think about that. Ponder on those questions. This week's episode is all about understanding the importance of saying no when you need to. No overextending yourself. No saying yes when you actually need to or want to say no. Just saying no and not feeling the need to explain yourself or to justify your no. Now, I know saying no when you've always leaned towards saying yes is very difficult. The reasons for always saying yes or for saying yes most of the time are different because we're all different and we all have different reasons. I struggled with overextending myself for many, many years. I struggled with thinking that I needed to say yes to everything. And my reasons included wanting to please people, wanting to feel included, not wanting to feel or not wanting for people to perceive me as the stuck-up person, the boring person, the person who never wants to go anywhere or never wants to do anything. And this was through high school and then varsity and then my working life. And it all looked different in the different times. So in high school, if somebody wanted me to do something for them and I wasn't necessarily comfortable with it, I would, because I just wanted to not be left out or not be perceived as the stuck-up one. And in varsity, you know, the whole partying, the just like living it up, that varsity lifestyle that comes with being a student, or that could potentially come with being a student. Being out every now and again, you know, going to this party, hanging out with these people, even if it's the things you don't necessarily want to do, you end up finding yourself in situations where you are doing them because you said yes to them, even if you were not necessarily in the space or wanting to say yes to those things. You just do it. And I was in a just do it phase in my varsity years. And in my working life, in the workplace specifically, my goodness me, I have struggled with saying yes in my young adult years, but I have never struggled or never said yes more than I have when I started working. And you know, with the work thing, it was because fresh out of varsity, I wanted opportunities really badly, and sometimes I was saying yes to things that were really, really bad for me. There's also there's a fine line between being a go-getter and striving to be absolutely great, and then just not knowing when to stop and just like saying yes to everything and being very, very desperate. And that's kind of where I found myself. I don't think it's something that is spoken of often enough, that there is this pressure that you get from yourself and from society, because everybody else is moving and you might feel like you're not. So any opportunity that comes up, you're going to say yes. If people want help with finishing a task at work, even if it's not your job, you jump in. That was me. If you are asked to make tea, even if it's not your job, you make tea. Those kinds of things. So I've been there. I have always struggled with saying no to the things that I actually want to say no to. And there have been different situations, different contributing factors to the reason why I used to say yes so much. Last year was the peak of it. And you know what? By the end of the year, I was so burnt out and I didn't have the capacity to do anything anymore. 8 hours plus of sleep wasn't helping me. Eating right wasn't energizing me as much as it should have been or it could have been. Going out wasn't helping. I was trying to balance myself out, but that wasn't working. I was just very exhausted mentally, and that needed for me to acknowledge that and work towards forgiving myself for putting myself in that position and for putting my well-being on the line like that, and just acknowledging that there's an internal problem. My mind was tired. My body was tired as well, but I feel like my mind was the most exhausted, and I just needed to get to the root of that and needed to understand, most importantly, why I was always trying to be the rescue and the help in everything and everywhere. It was always me dishing out the yeses, dishing out my yeses, like I was giving out flowers. The most important thing, however, that I realized is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying no. In all of this was the biggest realization that I made. And I know that for somebody else, it might sound like, oh my goodness, wow, it's not rocket science. It really isn't a big thing. But there are people that have issues, they have serious issues, and that's why it's so easy for them to just agree to things that they don't want to agree to. And for a long time, that was me. I had a very big problem, or I had an issue, or I had many issues with a lot of things that were internal. And that's why I struggled with being able to create boundaries and draw a line and say to a person, no, I am not going to be present for this because I cannot afford it, or just no, I don't want to do this, or no, this does not make me comfortable. And no, it does not make me comfortable because sometimes you don't need to because anything. Sometimes no, I am uncomfortable is a reason enough. That is a complete sentence. You do not have to carry on. You don't have to justify yourself to anyone. Just by saying you're uncomfortable is an indication of why you're not doing it. So I struggled with doing that. I wanted to please people. I always felt like I needed to fit in. I always felt like if I didn't say yes, then people were going to perceive me a certain way, as I've mentioned this before. And these were things that came from my childhood. They happened in my childhood, and I grew up with them, or I grew into them, and it was very much deeply rooted inside of me. So yes, those were driven by insecurities. It was driven by issues that I had and that I needed to deal with, and that I realized I needed to deal with as somebody growing up, growing into myself. And like I said, this realization, this happened at the end of last year, properly beginning of this year, where I realized that no ways, I put myself in a very difficult position, and that was very, very, very messed up, and I don't want to do that to myself again. So we need to start digging, and we need to start figuring out what the problem here is. So I took it upon myself to figure out that this is what's wrong and this is what needs to be worked on. And best believe I'm still working on it. Something else that's really important when it comes to working on yourself and healing yourself, or healing, I want to say, let me say healing. I think healing yourself is also appropriate, but I would rather say healing, because we aren't necessarily, or we don't have to be alone in anything. We don't have to feel like we have to heal ourselves and there isn't anyone we can go to, or there aren't any resources that we can use, or there isn't help we can ask for. So I'm going to say the process of healing is ongoing. It doesn't stop. I like to say that it is a journey. It isn't a destination. You don't sort of get to a place where you say, oh, I'm done with this. It's every day. It's in the little choices that you make. It's in the being conscious and saying, I am not going to go back to what I know, what I'm used to, just because it was easy or it was comfortable. I still need to understand that this is a problem that I've had for a long time, and it doesn't just go away easily. I need to address these issues always. Like, I need to get to a point where I'm comfortable with saying no, and that's it. No without worrying what people are going to say about me. No without feeling like people are not going to respect me or want me around them. Create my boundaries and be comfortable with that. So it's an ongoing thing, and I'm very happy to say that I'm making very, very good progress. I am comfortable with saying no to anyone when I don't want something. I am getting to a point where I'm extremely comfortable with saying no. When a thing isn't something I want, when a thing isn't something I'm comfortable with, if my gut is telling me that this is off, if I do not have the capacity to take it on, then I will say no to it. And that's the beginning and the end of it. So if there's anything that this has taught me, it's like creating boundaries for yourself so that you don't overstep and stretch yourself thin, and creating boundaries for other people when it comes to you will protect you so much. It will protect you from making bad decisions. It will protect you from putting yourself in bad places. It will protect you from what comes with not being able to say no. It will also protect you from people who want to take advantage, the soul and spirit suckers, because there are many of those. There are people that are more than happy to always accept a yes from a person, or to always expect a yes from a person. There are lots of people that are very happy to not have boundaries, or to overstep a person's boundaries and not see anything wrong with that. So you, as an individual who is responsible for your well-being, must make sure to create boundaries to keep those kinds of people out. It will also keep you from having people in your life that aren't meant to be there. It will give you the freedom to have honest, respect-filled relationships, not just with other people, but with yourself. And there is nothing better than being in relationships with other people where there are boundaries, where it's healthy, where you are being respected, just being respected and taken as you are. No one is questioning it. No one is trying to manipulate you about it. There is just common respect. It's a two-way street. So I found an article that gave me a different perspective to approaching saying no when you find it difficult to. And I thought this would be the perfect space or episode to share it. So I know how difficult it can be to say no. I know that it's not easy for everyone to say no thank you, to say no I'm not comfortable, to say no this is not my scene, because there are different contributing factors, as I have said. Not everybody has the same experiences in their lives. Not everybody is able to not worry themselves about not fitting in or not being perceived a certain way. We really aren't all the same, and I feel like it's important to just be aware of that. And I also feel like it's important to not... I've experienced people being very irritated with me or saying to me, oh my God, just grow up. Like, just grow up and say no. Just grow up and don't care, don't give a damn. Yeah, that's like very much easier said than done. It's also very, I want to say unfair. Yeah, I want to say unfair. It's very unfair to expect everybody to be the same because, like I said, we don't all have the same experiences. And of course, nobody wants to be a yes man or a yes woman, and nobody wants to feel like they need to be a certain way to be accepted or to be perceived in a good light by specific people. Nobody wants to feel like they need to put their well-being on the line or put themselves on the line or put themselves in compromising weird positions so that people pay attention to them. But I'm going to keep saying it throughout this episode. We are not the same. We don't come from the same backgrounds, and that just it doesn't just apply when it comes to financial well-being or financial capabilities. It is also how we were all raised and the effect that it had on one's emotional well-being or capacity physically, how you see yourself, what you see yourself being able to achieve. So that's what I mean. We really aren't the same. We don't come from the same backgrounds. And yes, of course, you might be stronger-willed, or you might really genuinely not care what other people think about you or what you are seen as, but there are people that are concerned about that, and the contributing factors of that they come from a very long way back. It comes from what they experienced as children, what they were raised in. So the reason why this episode exists is to affirm that you're not silly, you are not dumb, you are not incapable, or you don't not have a backbone. That's what I'm going to say. But you are able right now to change this, to create boundaries, to be comfortable with saying to people, no, this is not what I want, this is not who I am. The answer is no. So like I was saying, this article, it has a very different approach to how you can say no. It presents a problem and it presents a solution. This article was written by Regan Walsh and says there are 3 easy ways to determine if you aren't saying no enough. Number 1, you are constantly putting out fires. Before you are done with one task, another one pops up. You aren't making progress, and at the end of the day, you can't quite identify what you have accomplished. And the solution to this is using the life wheel. So this life wheel is really cool and it's very much interesting. This was my very first time hearing about it, and it makes so much sense. All you have to do is download it. I have created a link tree and added a link to the website where I found the actual wheel. It is in the bio of the A Cup Full Instagram account. It's recommended that you print that sheet out, but if doing it digitally works for you, then you can do that as well. The wheel is in the form of a pie or circle and is divided into 8 parts or 8 buckets. They are family, work, money, personal growth, health and wellness, spirituality, community, and living environment. And you must decide which of those 3 are most important to you. So there are 8, and from the 8, you need to see which of the 3 are most important to you. Does this yes crashing fall into one of those buckets? If the answer is no, stop saying yes to it. So, does the yes fit into one of those buckets? If the answer is no, stop saying yes to it. If it is not fitting in with your top 3, and you can see that, and you are evaluating it, and you are weighing it, then you cannot keep saying yes to it, because it's not adding anything to you. It doesn't align with what you want. It's not contributing to your growth the way you would like to. So that's one approach. The second one is, the problem is, it could be that you convince yourself that you can do it, even when realistically it isn't actually doable. So you convince yourself into saying yes to it. Then you stretch yourself beyond measure, but you pride yourself in knowing you can put it off, even when it is absolutely ridiculous. This used to be my spillion as well. Take on 5 tasks, take on 6. Sometimes because I need the money, sometimes because I need the experience, sometimes because I just want to make other people happy, or I want people to think that I can be their go-to person, and that I can be their trustworthy person, and that if they need me, I'm here. Oh my goodness, I will be to the rescue anytime you need me. Girl, and my well-being it wasn't even a priority. It didn't come first in any of these cases. So I would take all these things on, and I would just say I can do all of it. I'm a hard worker, which of course I am. I can balance it out. There isn't anything I can do. All right, but it didn't ever end well, because I was either always very, very tired or very irritated, or some tasks were not done to the best of my ability, The solution Walsh then presents is to ask yourself, if I am pulling it off all the time, are the results up to standard? Using this approach is not letting you stop and evaluate. If you are constantly working, constantly moving, nothing is stopping, nothing is giving you the room, giving you the space to look at what you're doing and look at the outcome of it and figure out if this is working or not, then it's not the approach you should be using. This means you need to get into prioritizing so that you can achieve the desired outcome. Stop saying yes to just pulling things off, to just getting things done. No. The answer needs to start being no a lot more often. And the last problem, you are saying yes now and regretting it later. I know that this is also something that I used to definitely struggle with. You didn't actually want to do it, but you felt compelled or wanted to impress someone, or you just didn't want to feel left out. The reasons can vary. But with this, you just feel guilty, but you also feel uninterested, and then you also feel very irritated with yourself, because why did I say yes to something that I actually wanted to say no to? The solution, the author of the article suggests embracing Greg McKeown's 90% rule. What is that? It's ranking your opportunities on a scale of 1 to 100. If the request ranks below a 90 for you, politely decline. If something is not what you want to do or need to do, then the answer should definitely be no. This way you can filter out your watered down inauthentic yeses, so that you have a clear purpose behind each decision. And sometimes using approaches like this can be very, very helpful, because you aren't used to saying no to things. Because you always want to be the go-to person, or you want people to perceive you as the one that's always there and that's always willing. Sometimes you don't have to be the one that's always there and the one that's always willing. People must know that there are boundaries when it comes to you, that it doesn't mean that because of you have said no to a thing, you are boring or uninterested. And also, if that's what they want to think, then that's what they want to think. You don't have to say yes to everything to appease people or to appeal to people. It's not your problem or your responsibility rather, to appease people. It really isn't. And I hope that listening to this podcast is giving you the confidence or giving you the desire to want to create proper boundaries in your life, and to understand that saying no doesn't make you the boring one, or it doesn't make you the person that's uninterested. It just means you are creating boundaries to protect yourself and to make sure that your mental and emotional and physical well-being is taken care of. So please just remember that if you feel like you cannot say no, then that yes you just responded with doesn't actually mean a single thing. Being selfish with your yeses will save you from things like burnout. Like I mentioned before, that burnout will come at you fast, feeling unhappy. It's going to prevent you from being exhausted. I know there are things that tire us out, like going to work and, maybe having multiple streams of income or whatever, but you have enough worries as it is. You can't be filling your space up with things like saying a yes because you want to feel validated by somebody, or saying a yes because you don't want people to not invite you out next time. You know what I mean? So take care of your well-being, prioritize yourself, give yourself space, give yourself room, and make people aware by saying, no, I will not be doing this, that you are creating boundaries. No, I'm not comfortable. No, don't ever speak to me like that again. No, I will not be going on holiday with you because I cannot afford it. Say it as it is. Speak it as it is. You never have to be rude. You never have to speak to people in a disrespectful way. You can politely say to a person, no, thank you, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Also, I'm definitely not saying don't show up for the people you love or even for yourself, please. But I am saying create boundaries and learn to be selfish about what you allow into your space. I saw this week's episode of the To My Sisters podcast speaks about being selfish. I just saw the caption or the heading, and let me call it the caption, or the name of this week's episode, and it got me thinking, even though I haven't listened to it. They were speaking about letting yourself be in your selfish era, and I just thought about how we often don't want to be selfish because we don't want people to think of us as, like I said before, uninterested, boring, never the one to call when you want to go out or you want to have fun, because I'm always going to say no, or not the one that's going to fill in for me when I'm late from wherever I'm coming from, even though everybody must be at work at the same time. Never the one that's going to be able to finish off a project or let me go off early. And I think it's important to be selfish in a way that's going to protect you and look out for you. I know that there are going to be very serious situations where a colleague might need you to fill in for them because they need to rush off to the hospital for a family member, or they aren't feeling well and they need to go to the doctor. There are very valid reasons and very important times in life where we need to offer our help and we need to say yes, but that's not going to be all the time. And I think that's important to highlight and to understand, that you need to be selfish where it's necessary, where it's important. When you do not have the capacity to be somewhere, when you cannot show up, you're exhausted emotionally, you're exhausted physically, you don't have to push yourself to go to a place. You just need to be able to communicate and say, I'm not in the space for this, I don't have the capacity for this, but probably next time when I'm not feeling this way. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. So what I am saying is create those boundaries and learn to be selfish about what you allow into your space, what you encourage and what you tolerate. At work, please don't agree to everything. You are going to end up being everyone's go-to person to help with this and to help with that. And when somebody is in a meeting, there'll be an expectation for you to agree with this, because that's just, you're the yes person. You're doing everything even when you don't agree to, even if you don't want to do it. You're agreeing to it even when you don't want to do it. Finishing up a project for that person, staying late to help that team with brainstorming, even when you're not on that team, even when it's not your job, even when it's not your responsibility. So I've said there are times where you're going to need to be helpful and you're going to really need to lend a helping hand. Those are valid times. But it's not going to be all the time. And that is 100% okay. I feel like there will also be instances, honestly speaking, where your colleague might need help, but you're also in a pickle. So it's also okay to say, I can't help you, but I can ask on your behalf. You go on ahead. I can ask on your behalf for this person to fill in for you. You know, something like that. So I'm not saying don't show up. I'm not saying stop being somebody that lives in a community and stop being aware of the fact that you live amongst other people. But I am saying just make sure to create proper boundaries where you don't have to be saying yes to things that you are truly uncomfortable with. In friendships, know when to explicitly make your loved ones aware that you do not have the capacity to take on someone else's problems because you are dealing with your own. That you do not have the capacity to go out or travel with everyone else because you have financial obligations that you need to save for. You cannot afford it. Don't ever feel like you need to say yes when the actual answer you want to give or you need to give in that situation is a no. There are also times, there's also a place where you need to say no. You need to say no because your circumstances are not allowing you to say yes. So don't compromise yourself and say yes to something that you actually need to say no to. Don't use your last 200 rands to go out when other people can afford it and you can't. Don't be on your last limb or your last limp spiritually and you're drained and you are finished and you need to recuperate and you need to refuel, but you are saying yes to things that are going to further deplete you. So when you need to say no, say no. Listen to yourself, listen to your heart, listen to your mind. And when it's a no, when it's immediately, don't do this, it's not what you should be doing, then please. Also, if you don't feel safe enough to say to your people, no, I cannot because it isn't affordable for me at the moment, or I'm tired, or I'm emotionally overwhelmed, or no, thank you, I have stopped drinking, then I think you should look into reevaluating those friendships. Because where you should feel the safest to express yourself freely is amongst your loved ones. It should be the same in romantic relationships. Saying no to your partner should not be followed by gaslighting or manipulation. Most definitely not. You should never ever feel like you have to agree to every single thing your partner wants or says. You are individuals with your own view on things and your own aspirations. And of course, couples have shared aspirations, but you are not conjoined at the hip. You are your own people. And so if your partner wants to make you feel bad for telling them that you will not be going anywhere with them or a specific place or, for example, to the club with them, or you can't afford to spend money on hosting people in your space if you live together, or you are not in the right mental space to be around people and they do not respect your asks and they don't want to hear you out and you addressed it more than enough, then it's time to walk. Don't ever allow somebody to make you feel like if you say no to them, they're going to lose you, or if you say no to them, you are going to lose them rather. If that's how a person is going to behave, then that's 100% a red flag, and you should 100% walk and don't look back, because that is abusive and it is manipulative, and that is not the right space for you. It really will mess with your mental and emotional well-being. So no one should ever make you feel like when you're saying no, you're being ridiculous. When you're saying no, it's because you're not comfortable with something. You don't want to do it. And when they are forcing you to say yes, that's one way to make you feel unsafe. It's one way to take away the trust. It's one way to make you feel like you need to always agree for them to stay in your life. It's also the very same thing with family. I know that navigating African families can be very, very difficult. I have seen it happen to family members. I have experienced it rather, especially from extended family. The pressure to be what you aren't, to agree to things that you are not comfortable with, to not be able to say no, it's perceived as disrespect. If you are asked, when are you getting married, when are you having children, when are you buying a house, when are you buying a car, people your age, and then you just straight on approach it and say, I feel like you're being disrespectful, I feel like you're overstepping boundaries, that is called disrespect. So I know that it's very difficult in the family setting, especially the African family setting, because the much older generations have this idea or this perception that when you respond, you are talking back, but you were asked a question. So I just feel like it can be very difficult in spaces like that, but you can still be very polite and you can still say what you want to say politely. And also, you can decide that you're not going to expose yourself to those kinds of people. You can make that active decision that this is toxic and it's not working for me. I feel like I am forced into doing things. I feel like no one respects me. I feel like there are no boundaries that can be created in those kinds of spaces. So at the end of the day, if you don't want to do it and you don't feel good about it, and you don't have to, if you don't have the money for it, then you don't. If you don't have the time for it, then you don't. Don't go get into debt to make other people happy. Don't go get into debt to make people perceive you a certain way. Don't go and steal your time from other things so that you can do something that you don't actually have the time to do. If you can feel yourself coming undone, emotionally, mentally, physically, please don't keep going at it. If you need help, please ask for it, receive it, let people help you. You can't keep overextending yourself. You can't keep drying yourself out, your bank account, your emotions, your physical well-being, your mental well-being. It's so unsustainable. It is so dangerous. It can 100% become life-threatening when you put yourself in those kinds of positions, when you go in that direction. It really isn't good. Be selfish with what you agree to, please. Think of your yeses as precious cargo in transit. You are driving as carefully as you can because you don't want to harm any of your goods, or you don't want any harm to come to your goods. Be careful with what you give a nod to, big and small. Protect your energy, protect yourself overall, and stay true to who you are and what you want. I think this is a good place to end this week's episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen again. I really enjoyed speaking on this. My English was not Englishing today though, and my voice is still in the gutter a little bit. But I really appreciate that you were here and that you heard me out and that you reached the end of this week's episode. Thank you again. Thank you so much for the overall support that you give to A Cup Full. Please don't forget to share this podcast as far and wide as you possibly can. Share this episode. We are on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, on Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music. And of course, A Cupful has an Instagram account. It is at @A_cupful. That is all small letters. Please do give the page a follow, and you are more than welcome to share your thoughts on this week's episode, on any episode actually. The DMs are always open, and you can also comment in the comment section of the post. Thank you very, very much for being willing to listen, to be here. I'm very, 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 very grateful. It's so exciting to see the kind of people that I get to reach different kinds of people that I get to reach. And I'm really grateful that a platform like this exists. Please take good care of yourself for the remainder of this week. I know that it is a 4-day work week, so that is something to look forward to. Don't forget to take good care of yourself, to get some rest, and to be protective of yourself and not just hand out yeses, especially when you want to say no. We'll catch you all in next week's episode, and don't forget to keep doing the things that fill your cup up.